Ravens Wrap is sponsored by Bud Light, jctickets.net, Geico Insurance, Dunaway Furniture, Ocean City Golf Club, RussellStreetReport.com, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, Holiday Inn Express, BuyAToyota.com, your official site for Toyota deals. The original Green Turtle, hosted by the Blue Ox Bar and Grill.
Welcome back in the original Green Turtles Ravens Wrap Show right here on Comcast Beach TV, ABC 47 WNBT, and 93.5 The Beach. Of course, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year to all. Coming to you from the Ravens Room of the Blue Ox Bar and Grill, 127th Street and Coastal Highway in Ocean City with Ravensers 44. Give yourself a as we continue to talk about
my favorite part of the show.
That's right.
What number was that?
Passion. It's like the move the chain gag. I love
Juice.
20-12, the Ravens win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. They improved to 9-5, and right now sit in the 6th seed for the AFC playoffs. And guys, we talked about some of the negatives the first couple of segments, and as fans we tend to do that. But let's talk about some of the positives. And we talked about Joe Flacco a few minutes ago, but a very efficient day for him, 20 of 30, 221 yards and a touchdown. And last week we talked about, and again the word depth comes out, but we talked about the fact that we may not have a number one receiver, but we have a lot of solid receivers and tight ends in the mix. And the fact that, Marlon Brown, Owen Daniels, guys like that, Joe, I think, has confidence, frankly, in a lot of the receivers, which is a good thing, Tony, and means that defensive coordinators have to pick their poison. And Marlon Brown, who really didn't play much early in the year, he's really emerging, and he was the leading receiver for the Ravens on Sunday.
Yeah, I think the Ravens have a nice complementary set of receivers that if they're used in the proper way, they'll be more efficient. In other words, Marlon Brown isn't a guy that's going to stretch the field, but he's really good at drag routes, and he catches with his hands. I mean, he just snatches the ball out of the air, and he's a big target. So that's one thing he's got going for him. You got Steve Smith, who's that crafty veteran. He can get downfield. He can cut off routes. He's a good route runner. Yep. And then you've got Torrey Smith, who can stretch the field. Now, Torrey needs to get healthy. I question the Ravens putting him on the field at all last week, and he played like he was hurt. So I don't know how he's going to shape up this week against the Texans, but I think they have a nice complementary set of receivers. And if you add Campanaro, another Paisan, right? Campanaro to the mix, I think that's going to be a nice little blend there.
Yeah, Torrey Smith played 51 of 62 snaps, but just a couple of catches. Had a big drop in the game as well, and a penalty, yeah. And a holding penalty on a running call. But the other guy, we mentioned Marlon Brown, but Owen Daniels. I mean, Ozzie Newsome has really, I think, not stepped it up, but bounced back, as I said, with the draft and with free agency. And Owen Daniels made a couple of big catches, had a touchdown catch, John, and you're a former tight end. We were worried about his injury issues over the last couple of years, but, man, he is a really solid tight end. And Dennis Pitta, we miss him, but we haven't thought about him much with Owen Daniels out there.
Knows the offense. That's why he was brought in, and he's fit in pretty well. Once he dropped some balls early. Once he's in the groove, though, I mean, he's made his presence felt. I mean, this offense, I think Joe leans on the tight end. I think really tight ends and pass-catching fullbacks. And when you can do things out of these base 21 personnel, I mean, when you have fullbacks and tight ends that can block and catch, it goes a long way. It allows you to do a lot of things. Of course, if your quarterback knows how to check into those plays. So Joe finds Owen Daniels when he's open. Gilmore made some catch. I mean, it's a nice complement of receivers.
Rick, there's nothing like being able to count on a veteran who's been there before. Talked about Steve Smith being crafty a second ago. A guy like Owen Daniels, similar type guy, been there, done that.
Yeah, and he's going to get open. I think the other teams are keying on Smith a little bit more than they did early in the season, so you haven't seen the big breakout games. And Daniels isn't going to give you the big play maybe that Pitta will, but he is a reliable receiver. And I think you're right. It gives him so many options. A quarterback has so many options to go to. It really helps make their pass offense a lot more effective.
And
or Daniels, could be a lot more effective.
Yeah, and Daniels made it, and Joe, too, a nice play. As Joe rolled out one way, they threw back the other way. And Daniels was trying to sell the corner route, and he slipped right through the two defensive backs the other side of the field. Joe put a nice touch on it, and then they had the play-action pass for the touchdown.
Yeah, it was a nice play. I thought they should have used more of that play-action in the game because I thought the Jaguars were really selling out on the run, and they did on that play. I think with certain substitutional packages that the Ravens use, that they dictate what they're going to do. And up to that point, they had not thrown the ball with Kyle Juszczyk on the field. they did then, and he was wide open. So it's nice to be able to use that sometimes.
Kyle Juszczyk, though, we're still a big fan of, but he fumbles the ball.
44.
That's twice. Yeah, that's right. That's twice now, though, this season he's fumbled the ball. I don't know why he had the ball out. He should have brought it in when he caught it when he was going to the ground. I don't understand that. It was. I know it was a close call, but even if it turns out he was already down, which again it was close, the technique was poor. He needs to.
Do we
a
really
better
love
job.
him though? I mean, I think.
Well, I shouldn't say love, but I mean,
think he's a poor fullback. Really, he doesn't block well.
I've seen it times.
I mean, he's a pass-catching fullback. I mean, fullbacks need to block. But anyway, we'll move on.
Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about though.
He went to Harvard.
We're trying to be positive.
He's a smart dude.
Smart.
He should play quarterback.
I bet he can count to 9.
And how many Super Bowls?
I
does
just
Kyle
like
Juszczyk
teasing
have?
him. I like watching his faces. I mean, this is terrible TV because I'm just laughing up here, but just looking at the faces.
World TV?
No chance of ever getting a Christmas card from the Flacco family. I'll tell you that right.
I did get one from the Ravens, and he's in it.
If he only knew, they'd withhold that. But defensively, 8 sacks for the Ravens in the game. And guys, we talk about having the 2 edge rushers in Suggs and Dumerville, which is huge. But you also throw in Pernell McPhee, who can play down lineman. He can play linebacker. But before we get to any of them, how about the job defensive tackle Timmy Jernigan did? We knew he was a kid that had a motor. We knew he could do a lot of great things in this league. There was some question about taking some plays off in college, but Tony, he's been a great draft pick, and he really has not had us miss Haloti Ngata, at least yet.
No, I mean, since Haloti Ngata has been suspended, the Ravens have had 14 sacks in 2 games. So, and Timmy Jernigan's a big part of that. You hear the players talk a lot about, especially like Dumerville and Suggs, that they're rushing into a phone booth. And what they mean by that is that you've got Jernigan and McPhee and Brandon Williams collapsing the pocket so that the guys around the edges, it makes their jobs a lot easier because the quarterback can't step up in the pocket. So Jernigan's a big part of that. And he's got that slap rip move that Trevor Price was known for. And when you hear players talk about other players and they talk about Tim Jernigan, that's a good sign. So, yeah, he's been a really, really good draft pick, and he might save the Ravens $8 million in cap space next year.
John, we may have one of the deepest and most versatile defensive lines. I mean, Brandon Williams was drafted out of, a 1-2A school in Missouri Southern at nose tackle. You've got Timmy Jernigan. You mix in a Canny. You mix in a McPhee. Obviously, Ngata when he's there. They've got a lot of different guys that they could go to there. And we forgot a couple other lesser-named guys in the mix as well.
Tyson Guy. And this guy they just picked up from the New England Patriots off their practice squad.
That's right. But we could. That's the one area where we could afford to have some injuries, and folks have stepped up.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a situation there where the defensive line is really, especially with all the concerns in the secondary, has kept the Ravens alive defensively. So it's in the linebacking, as the linebackers are playing well. It's just. Got to be strong somewhere. You're going to be a bad team, and defensive line is a strength coming in. They've stepped up when the Ravens needed them to. So when you have a strength, and then that strength underperforms, and then another element of your team, breaks down due to injuries. That's when everything cascades. So really, the strength of their defense has stepped up when the Ravens were desperate for him to do it.
And Rick, you talked about the Browns suffering some defensive line issues, but to have the defensive line to push up the middle to complement the outside linebackers, where does the quarterback go?
It makes all the difference. And again, we're talking next man up. Guy steps up, plays very well when Ngata's out. Then the key there is if they all stay healthy and Ngata comes back for the playoffs, then you've got that extra depth, just as other teams are probably starting to get worn down. So they're in a pretty good position with the defensive line.
That's a great point. I mean, because Ngata comes back 4 games rested,
Yep.
and getting back to something John said earlier about playing with desperation. Haloti Ngata is playing with desperation because he's playing for his contract.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And look, if we're going to suffer on the back end with the secondary, to have the front 7 that we do to stop the run, but also get after the passer is important.
Absolutely.
The one thing I would argue a little bit against some of the better offensive lines, though, especially as we go on here and get into the playoffs, so it looks that way. Things are put in the positive direction. Going to have to do a better job against the better offensive lines, though.
Yeah, absolutely. But I like what John said too. As you get deeper into the playoffs, the weather gets worse, and the worse it gets, I think it plays into the Ravens' favor.
Too.
Hey, that's where the class comes in, and that's really, I know I tease Joe a lot. He's still my favorite quarterback, but he does have. When I say his mind is numb, that's good and bad. And when the conditions are bad, Joe becomes elite because other quarterbacks, the bigger superstar you are, the more sensitive you become. Yeah, Peyton Manning couldn't deal with the cold. Tom Brady couldn't deal with the wind. But Flacco did just fine. So if we stay outside and in unfavorable conditions, those unfavorable conditions it becomes the 12th man for the Ravens, no matter where the Ravens are.
Right, and to your point about that mental numbness, I know you're using it as a compliment.
Yeah.
That's why they're so good on the road in the playoffs.
Yeah.
He's unfazed.
Yeah. And we're talking about some of the young guys getting experience here. They're getting some time that now come playoff time, they're going to have that hopefully going into the playoffs, where they'll be able to draw from the regular season. They won't be going in wet behind the ears.
No, that's why I said before, every win in December is a good win. And if your other guys are playing and they're getting the playing time and you're deeper going into the playoffs, that's an edge you're going to have over the other teams. That may be the most important edge moving into the playoffs this year with all the injuries you've seen throughout the league.
We've had a lot of guys get injured in the secondary we talked about. One of the guys that ended up having to come in that stepped up, a guy that we picked up off the Miami Dolphins practice squad, Rashawn Melvin, came in and played pretty well, Tony.
You know, the thing I liked about Melvin is that right off the bat, he makes a play on a blitz. It was a run play to the opposite side. He just continued with it, and then making a tackle for a loss. So I like that. I didn't like the fact that he got up after his first play in the NFL and acted like he was Deion Sanders. So that bothered me a little bit. But after that, he showed some instincts, Mike, that I haven't seen from a lot of Ravens defensive backs this year, including Ladarius Webb, the highest paid one.
I mean, at least it seems like occasionally the Ravens here, when they have to go and pick up some guys from other teams, they've had somewhat success. I mean, Danny Gore, all in all, wasn't playing that poorly before he got hurt. For what we asked of him, he was doing a halfway decent job. So far, very short. Rashawn Melvin's done a decent job. We'll see. Guys like Antoine Cason, and we'll talk about Chris Greenwood, who we picked up off the Vikings practice squad. Let's hope that they can contribute here and there enough, and as a collective group, get it done.
And coaching. I mean, this is why these coaches are the best in the business and get paid. They need to hide some of your flaws and put some makeup on it.
Yeah, no question about it. Well, we're getting down to it. And coming up, we'll talk about the Ravens.
2-10, but a 10-2.
That's right. We'll talk about the Ravens going into Houston, taking on the Texans. We'll also talk about the playoffs and where things stand in various scenarios, and some more news and notes with Tony. All coming your way right now. It is the Ravens Wrap Show on Comcast Beach TV, ABC 47 WNBT, and 93.5 The Beach. We're back next. Keep it here.
In April 1959, Art Wall won the Masters, edging out Carrie Middlecoff and Arnold Palmer by finishing birdie, 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 par birdie. 1 month later, Ocean City Golf Club celebrated the opening of their first 18 holes. That course has been transformed now into one of the most scenic golf layouts on the East Coast. Come experience 36 of the most beautiful and challenging holes you'll find anywhere. Ocean City Golf Club in Ocean City, Maryland.
Come see us at Blue Ox.
Welcome to the Comfort Inn Gold Coast. Conveniently located just 1 block from the beach and adjacent to shopping at the Gold Coast Mall and the movie theater. Newly renovated and open year-round with a marvelous bayfront view. Visit us on the web at comfortgoldcoast.com and see our hot deals and great golf packages, or simply call our direct reservation line to plan your stay.